My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my list of the 10 worst movies of 2022. And I'm not going to lie, there was lots of terrible movies that came out. So to only pick 10 was pretty challenging. There was like 20 other movies that could have easily made this list, but I set it on the 10. And to find out what they are, stay tuned. So the 10th worst movie of 2022 is Cloaks III. Now, Kevin Smith has made some good movies in the past, but current day Kevin Smith just isn't the same. His movies aren't what they used to be, and he isn't what he used to be. They did what movies do so often nowadays, and they take the happy ending from the previous movie and just shit all over it, trying to be deeper and more profound than it actually is. And that just doesn't work for me. It feels like a cop out and like you're trying so hard to be emotional. And every attempt just felt pathetically hollow. And when this movie wraps up in the last act and they take the direction they do, I didn't find it to be. I found it to be laughably absurd. And it's just like, yeah, I think I'm just done with him as a filmmaker. Like, this is really bad. And on top of that, this movie isn't remotely funny. I don't think I laughed a single time, but I cringed throughout. The whole subplot of this Christian turning into a Satanist was just an atrocious decision. And I also hate the way this movie looks. It looks so clean and crisp, and it's just lacking what made the first movie so good. And one last thing I'll say about this movie is when they're talking about why the first Cloaks was in black and white, I'm just like, oh my god, he has his head so far up his ass. This is a terribly unfunny, cringy, pathetic attempt at being emotional. Just, it's a mess of a movie. I hated it, and honestly, not to sound mean, but it might be time for Kevin Smith to retire. My ninth worst movie of 2022 is. Look, I'm not going to lie. I know some people love this movie and had a blast with it, but this was one of the worst theater experiences of the year, and it goes to Bullet Train. First of all, this movie's like 2 hours and 17 minutes long, and there's no justification for this length. I kept checking my Fitbit, just checking the time, hoping the movie was going to wrap up soon. And it's just like, another hour? Are you kidding me? I don't think it's a well-paced movie at all. You definitely feel the length. And the action in this movie wasn't good. I also hate the amount of comedy here. First of all, it never made me laugh once. But also, it undercut any bit of tension or drama that could have been present, and it just ruined the movie time and time again. And then you've got this obnoxious in-your-face style which thinks it's so original and so fresh, but it's something we've seen done plenty of times before. And the cast, for the most part, didn't work for me. I feel like they wanted Ryan Reynolds to lead this movie, but they couldn't get him, so they settled with Brad Pitt. And I love him as an actor. I actually think he's one of the best actors ever, and this is one of his worst performances. Sandra Bullock's in it for a very short period, and she's not good. Joey King is so miscast. Everything with this character just infuriated me. Aaron Taylor Johnson and Brian Tyree Henry, I know people love. They didn't do all too much for me. You got Mad Bunny, something like that, in there for one scene. You got Andrew Koji, one of the best action stars working nowadays, and you just wasted him. The guy should have had like every action scene in this movie. To be honest, he should have been the lead in this movie, and they just did nothing with him. It was infuriating. And then Michael Shannon's in it for a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, he really didn't do anything. The CGI was bad. The soundtrack was obnoxious. I'm just done with the song I Need a Hero. It was perfected in Shrek. Leave it alone. I hated this movie. I wanted to be over the entire time. Yes, so it's one of the worst movies of the year. And then an eighth worst movie of the year goes to Bardo and the Chronicle of a Handful of False Truths or something like that. Bardo. I'm just calling it Bardo. Uh, Look, I'm sure some people are going to look deeper into this movie and be like, it's brilliant, and they're going to write essays about it, and I can understand why some people might like this movie. But I just couldn't connect with it if my life depended on it. I need some sort of engagement, and I got none of that here, so I just found it to be a pretentious, self indulgent ballfest of a movie. It is 2 hours and 40 minutes long, and boy, do you feel it. Alejandro Inarritu has made some great movies in the past, but here he just has his head so far up his ass. There's no real story or character. It's just a series of scenes with very little connection. I get what he's trying to do, but it didn't resonate in any way with me. And I just, like, if someone asked me to watch this movie again, like, it was just too long, too boring, and just, like I said, no real story to connect with. So I hated it. So that's why it's my 8th worst movie. The 7th worst movie of 2022 goes to The Bubble. Now, Judd Apatow is a director I love. 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up, Funny People, This Is 40, all amazing movies. And I just don't know what happened here. This isn't just a small drop in quality. This is like as nose-divey as it gets. And it reinforces my point that anything that goes to Netflix goes there to die. This doesn't feel like a Judd Apatow movie. This feels like a Netflix movie. And it's just an embarrassing disaster for everyone involved. This movie is never funny, and every attempt is just embarrassing to even watch. The cast is just making a fool of themselves, with only few staying, not completely embarrassed. There's this scene where they're pretending to be dinosaurs and dancing, and I was just like, what am I watching? And it doesn't help that this movie is over 2 hours long. It was insufferable. Like, you got yourself a great premise of these people trying to make a movie during the pandemic. Like, that could have been really funny, but it's just like they got the most unfunny. They got the writers of SNL to just write this movie, and they told the actors, don't even try. And then we just got this shit show. Like, it's just truly baffling how Judd Apatow and this cast made a movie this bad. Yeah, I hated it. The 6th worst movie of 2022 is a movie that lots of people love, but I honestly despise. And the more I think about this movie, the more I hate it. And it's The Whale. I did not like anything this movie was trying to do. It felt so desperate and so emotionally hollow, and I was just on a total disconnect the entire time. At no point was I on the same wavelengths as this movie. Just everything it's trying to do with the characters of this guy who's been a terrible person his entire life, who ruined his family and left his wife for his boyfriend, and who's now just eating himself to death, and them trying to paint him as this good guy who's worthy of redemption in his last few days. Just, no, that did not work for me. I hated how anti-religion this movie was without showing any honest attempts at both sides. I thought everything with Sadie Sink's character was so over the top, and she was just insufferable. Like, she was an evil psychopath. Like, it's one thing to show a moody teenager, but this really crossed the line. And just this movie all taking place in one room, being like 2 hours long, I was just bored the entire time. And anything it tried to say or do anything, like, I hated it. And then we get to the ending. Well, spoiler alert, well, he goes to heaven. And like, when he gets up and starts walking, look, I'm going to sound mean, but it reminded me of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs when the male gets off the scooter thing and he's walking. It's just, I couldn't take it seriously. I did not feel any bit of emotion. And then we get this last second where he goes to heaven, and hated this movie. Hated. If it, I'm going to, because it's a list, I don't want to go too much into this, but what I loved about BoJack Horseman is that there's one episode early on where BoJack tries to apologize to this friend he was really shitty to, and his friend's just like, no, you don't get to apologize to me now that I'm dying just to take it off your chest. I want you to live with it for the rest of your life. And that's when I realized BoJack Horseman was a brilliant show, and this movie is the complete opposite of that moment. Hated this movie. I hated. The fifth worst movie of 2022 might shock some people that this isn't number one, but it's Jeepers Creepers Reborn. There's a review series for this franchise coming out this year, and I'll say this. I hate it. I think it might be the worst film franchise of all time. And this is definitely one of the worst of the bunch. It is an atrocious, nearly unwatchable movie. Some of the CGI is so laughably bad that I got some mild entertainment from it, but even the way that like the movie looks with people glowing in the graveyard and all that, it looks remarkably cheap. The Jeepers Creeper dude isn't creepy here. The movie's completely void of any tension or atmosphere. The acting is all terrible. There's a few characters switching accents every few seconds. Then you've got this plot with this girl being pregnant, and you're just like, where is this going? And it's a movie that bored me, and I didn't like in any way. The only reason why it's this high up is that it's only an hour and a half. So yes, really hated this movie. The fourth worst movie of 2022 is Jurassic World Dominion. And look, I didn't have high expectations for this movie. All I wanted was dinosaurs wreaking havoc around the globe. And I couldn't even get that. How do you fumble that this badly? The ending of the last movie sets everything up that we've been waiting for this movie, and you fuck it up. How do you do that? And what we got instead was locusts. That's the best you could come up with? And the attempts to bring the original cast back together just felt so desperate and so contrived, and they're just handled in a way that didn't resonate with me. Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, I thought were just sleepwalking throughout this entire movie. And it's just lacking in any bit of energy, any bit of magic, any bit of awe and wonder. Everything that the original movie had. It's never tense, it's never scary. And the movie is 2.5 hours long, and boy, do you feel it. And then, once again, you got the dinosaurs in the world, and what do? You go back to a lab in the middle of this jungle. So the movie still has the same looking environment. It still feels the exact same. My god, this movie really pissed me off because there was potential to be at least a really fun, dumb movie. And you don't even get that. You just get a complete waste of time. And they just made every wrong decision. It's incredibly boring. I freaking hated this movie. The third worst movie of 2022 is a mystery movie where the death doesn't even happen until an hour into it. And it's Death on the Nile. There's two movies that could have been applicable to, which I do find funny. But no, this was definitely the worst of the bunch. I hated this movie. First of all, I just find this movie and Murder on the Orient Express to just lack in any bit of energy or life or personality. I find these movies to be relentlessly boring. And for only a 2-hour long movie, it felt so much longer for me. And then the movie begins with the origin story of the Hercule Poirot mustache. Like, really? That's how we're beginning this movie? And then within the next scene, spoiler alert by the way, they just introduce Arnie Hammer, Gal Gadot, and Emma something's character, and I just figured everything out from there. That, okay, this is what's going to happen. And when we saw them again, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is definitely it. I'm not good at solving mysteries, but it was so obvious with this movie. But we still don't even get the death scene, like I said, until an hour into it. So the first hour is just obvious setup, just making it all the more obvious, and then when the murder happens, you at least expect it to pick up somewhat, and it doesn't. It is still as boring, mind-numbingly boring as the first half of this movie. It is not entertaining, it's not tense, it's not engaging in any way. It is just a relentlessly dull piece of shit movie. They're making a third one, I think, coming out this September, and maybe I'll watch it, but don't be surprised if I don't, because I just despise this franchise. It is just a murder mystery on a boat in the Nile. Like, that should have been amazing, and you found a way to just avoid it of anything good. My second worst movie of 2022 is Amsterdam. Now, I heard terrible things about this movie before I watched it, but I like lots of David O. Russell's past movies. I love Silver Linings, I love American Hustle, I even liked Joy, and I'm just like, I don't think this movie is going to be that bad. So I gave this movie a watch, and it was that bad. Like, you've got yourself a stellar cast here: Christian Bale, John David Washington, Margot Robbie, Rami Malek, Michael Shannon, I think, Chris Rock, Taylor Swift, and they're all just doing a really bad job. The only one who I felt like understood the movie she was in was Anya Taylor-Joy, but everyone else, you're just watching some of their worst work. In the main friendship between Christian Bale and Margot Robbie and John David Washington, I didn't buy it for a second. At no point did I feel like these were best friends. At no point did I connect with them. And then there was just this overly convoluted and contrived plot that I didn't care about to begin with, but I somehow got less interested every following scene. Up until a climax where I'm just begging for this movie to end. It's 2 hours and 14 minutes long, and there's just no acceptable reason for that length. It bored me to no end. I kept checking the time. When will this be over? It is just as boring, as dull, and as forgettable as movies come. And like, I don't get how someone made some really good movies in the past made a movie on this level of a disaster. It's also lacking in any bit of personality as well, and man, this movie was just tough to get through. But it's not the worst movie of the year. That title goes to Pinocchio. No, not that Pinocchio. The other Pinocchio. Disney's Pinocchio. The live-action remake. Now, if you ask me what the worst movie of 2019 was, I'd say The Lion King. If you ask me what the worst movie of 2020 was, I'd say Mulan. And now in the year of 2022, what's the worst movie of the year? Pinocchio. Disney's got to stop it with these live-action remakes. They're taking great movies and just trying as hard as possible to ruin them. And this movie is yet another example of that. First of all, let's talk about the CGI, because this is some of the worst CGI I've ever seen from a big studio in my lifetime. There is no acceptable, like, the fact that they saw this and thought it was good enough to release is truly baffling to me. This movie looks hideous. It looks fake. At no point is it convincing. And when Pinocchio's tearing up at the end, like, it looks so flat. It lacks any bit of texture. It's an abomination visually. And then you've just got this story that we've seen done greatly and perfectly done before, and they find a way to just take everything great about that story and just make it bad. Instead of Pinocchio learning about all these life lessons, we're just supposed to feel bad for him. And it ruins everything that's great about that original movie. And then, like in the original, he's drinking beer and smoking cigars. But in this movie, he's drinking root beer, and they think that's a reasonable replacement? Like, no, the two can't be compared. And then he has to lie to get out of trouble when before it was always seen as a bad thing. But here, it seems like they're encouraging it. And then they add in this female puppet character, which I really hated. And the movie, and Tom Hanks' performance is some of the worst work he's ever done. How he's fallen in the past few years is just beyond me, but this was truly embarrassing for him. And the movie's like under 2 hours long, but it felt so much longer. I was just begging for the movie to end the entire time, and I was hoping to at least gain some entertainment, and it's so bad it's good, but I couldn't even get that. It's everything wrong with Hollywood nowadays. It is a complete disaster. It lacks in any bit of originality, and it's just leave these classic movies alone. This year we're getting The Little Mermaid, and it's just, we don't need this. Make something new. Make something exciting. Stop falling back on the same movies time and time again. It's just really frustrating for me. It would be bad enough if this was an atrocious piece of shit movie, but the fact that they just couldn't even come up with their own idea just makes it all the more worse. This movie is yet another atrocious Disney live action remake. There was nothing good or redeeming about it. It is abysmal. And it's the worst movie of 2022. So that's my list, but what's your list of the worst movies of 2022? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, stay tuned for some more videos soon, and Gavin out.